What is poppin' YouTube? Bringing you an updated rookie mock draft with all of my rankings post-draft. Starting it off with the 101 is going to be Caleb Williams. We've been talking about Caleb Williams for literally like the last 2 to 3 months as the clear 101 in Dynasty. He lands with the Bears. Not only do they draft him that already has DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift in the backfield, but then you add in the fact that they add Rome Odunze with pick 9, Caleb Williams, the clear 101. We do not need to talk about it any longer. The 102 in this draft for me is going to be Marvin Harrison Jr., who lands at pick 4 to the Arizona Cardinals. Now, with Marvin Harrison Jr., I understand it was a juicy quarterback class in the first 12 picks. When you have 6 total quarterbacks off the board, it's exciting for us in Superflex leagues, but Marvin Harrison Jr. is that guy. If you've watched any of my previous content, you know that I am a Buckeye fan, and you also know that I talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. in highlight, as does the NFL, and landing with that top 5 draft capital. Absolutely love the landing spot for Marvin Harrison Jr., being able to pair up with Kyler Murray to really form a really great tandem. Now, I understand you might not think Kyler Murray can lead the Arizona Cardinals to an absolute Super Bowl, but I think he can lead Marvin Harrison Jr. to be a top 10 type finish in his first season for fantasy football purposes, which leads him to be a top 5 dynasty wide receiver in my rankings. If you got the 102 and you don't need a quarterback, I understand. Get some Marvin Harrison Jr. But like we said, this is Superflex rankings. So at my 103, we will have Jaden Daniels. And I think there is the argument that Jaden Daniels landing with the Washington Commanders, pick 2 overall. It's exciting because he's a Konami code quarterback. He has that rushing overall floor, which helps his overall ceiling. You got Scary Terry, you got Jahan Dotson. They drafted Ben Sinnott, who we'll talk about a little bit later. You got Brian Robinson in the backfield. You got Austin Eckler. Jaden Daniels is the perfect fit for this Cliff Kingsbury scheme. Now, landing him at the 103 is absolutely awesome, but he is my 103 here in this mock draft. My next guy is going to be Drake May. If you've watched anybody in the Dynasty space over the last 2 or 3 days, I feel like people are starting to push down Drake May. And I understand the weapons aren't looking great. It's not like Jaden Daniels, who has Scary Terry, has Austin Eckler, has a really great offense, or you're looking at Caleb, who probably is walking into an amazing situation. Drake May, the fact that we are comparing him to some quarterbacks that are drafted behind him, I think is crazy, because pre-draft process, you probably had Jaden Daniels and Drake May neck and neck. Some people had Daniels, some people had May. I was one of those people that I think Drake May in any other class is the clear 101. So I am not going to be pushing him down the board just because he lands on a New England Patriots team that in the past, of course, we've been worried about their wide receivers, which they address the wide receivers a ton, but we're still looking at it and it's like, is KJ Osborne the one? Is it going to be Pop Douglas? I hear you. It's not looking great, but we can't just base this off of this current season, because Drake May, as much as we would love to take a guy like Malik Neighbors over Drake May, if this is Superflex rankings, and we do know that these quarterbacks do have this insulated value that when you're drafted in the top 5, you're going to get all the shots in the world. Zach Wilson was given a full 2 years before they ended up bringing in Aaron Rodgers. I'm excited for Drake May. I think there is some risk, of course, with Drake May, but I don't think it's enough for me to be taking another quarterback over Drake May at the 104. At the 105, we'll be going with Malik Neighbors, who ends up with the New York Giants. If you watch this press conference, definitely was not happy to be drafted to the New York Giants, to be playing with Daniel Jones. If you heard him in the conference, I know it's Daniel Jones. Couldn't pronounce it right, but I think Malik Neighbors, who else is in this offense? There's rumors Darren Waller is going to retire. We've talked about all the slot options. They got rid of Saquon Barkley, so they got Devin Singletary in the backfield. We're talking about Malik Neighbors, who has the potential to have like 130 targets to 140 targets in his rookie season, and I like Malik Neighbors here at the 105. I think there's going to be a lot of talk in the Dynasty space about Malik Neighbors versus Drake May for the 104 spot, and even like I said, Drake May is probably, a lot of people already are projecting him at the 106, 107, which I think is crazy, but Malik Neighbors, clear 105 for me still. If you want to bump him up, I understand why you would do it, especially if it's something with a roster type build, but have Malik Neighbors at the 105. Let me know what you think about that down below. We then at the 106, we end up with JJ McCarthy, and like I said, this is Superflex rankings. JJ McCarthy lands with the Minnesota Vikings, and shout out to my boy Andrew from the League FFB, big Vikings fan, super excited for JJ McCarthy. I'm excited about JJ McCarthy. I'm excited for my Jordan Addison shares, excited for my Justin Jefferson shares. A lot of things to be excited about with JJ McCarthy landing on the Minnesota Vikings. When does he start? Will he start week 1? What's that competition going to be like with Sam Darnold? I don't care. It's Superflex. If you need a quarterback, good to have JJ McCarthy. Kind of lands in that top 15 dynasty quarterback range for me. At the 107, I'm not going to overthink it. I'm still going to get Rome Odunze, who lands with the Bears at pick 9. Now, you do have Keenan Allen. You do have DJ Moore. So Rome Odunze kind of got JSN'd from the jump. But as we like JSN's profile, we also like Rome Odunze, who was our wide receiver 3 pre-draft process. We're not going to be just changing that because he has 2 really amazing wide receivers ahead of him. I mean, Keenan Allen is getting up there in age. DJ DJ Moore's not getting any younger, and you have an electric level quarterback that just gets added into this offense. You got a pretty good offensive line. Rome Odunze, I understand, wide receiver 3, you never love it, but if you're looking at pass catchers, I mean, as much as I love Cole Kmet, I still think Rome Odunze steps in as the clear third receiving option, and it's a long season, so give me some Rome Odunze. Not going to overthink it. Still going to be drafting talent a lot of times over situation. As much as some of these situations impacted my rankings, I still draft talent over situation most of the time. Move on to the 108, and this is another example of talent over situation, is going to be Brock Bowers, who lands with the Raiders. Now, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, Caleb, Brock Bowers, he was supposed to be a top 7 pick, and look what happens. He lands with the Raiders. We were hoping for the Colts. We were hoping for the Jets. The Raiders' offensive line stinks. They don't have a quarterback. Like, why are you putting Brock Bowers in this absolutely loaded wide receiver class ahead of some of these other guys? And my biggest argument with Brock Bowers, let's not overthink the talent. We talked about him as a top 3, top 4 tight end. Just because he lands on the Raiders doesn't mean that that talent is all of a sudden gone. Really what it means with Brock Bowers is maybe that overall upside's capped in year 1. But like we said, we don't just play Dynasty on a year-by-year basis. Yes, the stock market does fluctuate quite a bit, but when I'm looking, like, I'm taking the top quarterbacks, I've taken the top wide receivers. Brock Bowers, for me, I still have him here as the 108. I understand if you're going to push him lower, but let me know what you think of Brock Bowers down below. At the 109, I do have Brian Thomas Jr., who lands with the Jaguars. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a good Calvin Ridley replacement. I'm not worried about Gabe Davis. I mean, you still got Christian Kirk. You still got Evan Ingram. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr. with the first round pick. They absolutely love him. Touchdown dominant machine. I think he could have potential to be an alpha level type wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. Got to take that upside shot at the 109. At the 110, I take Bo Nix. And yes, I take Bo Nix ahead of Michael Penix Jr. just because we do know Bo Nix has that chance to start out of the jump. Now, do I absolutely love Bo Nix's profile? Do I think Bo Nix is an absolutely talented quarterback? No, but he did to get top 12 draft capital, and draft capital matters for these NFL teams. So I give Bo Nix a shot at the 110. If you're a back-end contender, I know you might want to go in a different direction if you're already absolutely loaded at quarterback in a Superflex league, but I think you got to take a shot on Bo Nix at the 110. At the 111, I go with Michael Penix Jr. And hear me out. Atlanta definitely had the worst draft out of anybody by drafting Michael Penix Jr. after you've just paid Kirky Boy Cousins of dollars, that Coles money, that Coles cash that you sent to Kirk Cousins. Then you're looking at Michael Penix Jr. But if you look at these quarterbacks that get drafted in the top 10, almost they get a starting shot to start by year 2. So as much as we think the situation is not going to like figure itself out, clearly they drafted Michael Penix Jr. with a reason. They think he is the future. Give me a shot at Michael Penix Jr. at 111. I understand if you're not going to like it. I know a lot of Dynasty analysts are already saying, oh, but it's not going to change. The draft capital doesn't change. That type of draft capital changed my opinion. Give me Michael Penix Jr. at the 111. At the 112, we will be going with Xavier Worthy, who lands with the Kansas City Chiefs. Absolutely speedster. Patrick Mahomes tweeted out, was super excited to have Xavier Worthy. I understand his type of profile doesn't necessarily always scream fantasy football production when you're looking at guys like a John Ross, like a Henry Ruggs, but he's a better wide receiver. We talked about this in the pre-draft process than those type of wide receivers that he gets compared to a lot of the times. Runs really great routes. When we're looking at this tree, we got Travis Kelce, who probably has another year, maybe 2 years worth left in the tank. You got Rashee Rice, and then you also got Hollywood Brown, who is on a 1-year deal. So yes, maybe he is stepping into a crowded wide receiver room, but we absolutely love the talent. We love the draft capital. Give me Xavier Worthy at the 112. At the 2-1, we will be going with Ladd McConkey, and I hear you. If you're going to argue with me that Ladd McConkey deserves to be at the 110 over some of these quarterbacks just based on the volume, based on the fact that he essentially revived Justin Herbert's dynasty value, putting it up from the grave, I hear you. But I just can't do that with Ladd McConkey. I absolutely love the landing spot, but there was just so many great landing spots in this NFL draft that Ladd McConkey here starts off the 201. At the 202, I do have Jonathan Brooks, who is the clear running back 1 for me in this class. He was both pre-draft and post-draft, lands with the Panthers. Shout out to the Panthers doing absolutely amazing work in their front office with drafting a ton of weapons to kind of surround Bryce Young. We do like the Dave Canales effect with Jonathan Brooks. Give me Jonathan Brooks here at the 2-2. At the 2-3, we'll be going with Trey Benson. And yes, is James Conner in the picture? Sure, he is in the picture. But Trey Benson is definitely a highly talented running back who has the potential to take over. We've seen James Conner get dinged up before. He's been kind of an Iron Man here as of late. But Trey Benson at the 2-3, love this with this revamped Arizona offense that continues to add weapons after weapons after weapons. At the 2-4 is Keon Coleman. And a lot of people were not expecting Keon Coleman to go this high and to get a landing spot like the Buffalo Bills. But if we were to dream it up, that's where we would want him. Now, where is this alpha level presence? I mean, there was a funny interview clip from Keon Coleman talking about his jackets, talking about how he shops at JCPenney, shops at Kohl's. I understand Keon Coleman, we didn't love his 40-yard dash time, but if we look at his production profile that he had coming out of the Florida State, 2-4 feels really great, feels really solid for Keon Coleman. At the 2-5, we got Ricky Pearsall, and Ricky Pearsall Pearsall, honestly, a lot of people were talking about a sleeper pick, that he was going to be your third round target. Well, once you get that first round draft capital to no other team but the 49ers, that kind of sleeper cachet starts to wipe off of you in the dynasty landscape. I understand there's a lot up in air with Brandon Ayuk, with Deebo Samuel. Do both of them end up playing for the 49ers going into the season? Even still, Ricky Pearsall is going to be the wide receiver 3, maybe the wide receiver 2, depending on what currently happens. But getting that back end first round draft capital for a prospect that we honestly weren't looking at really highly in our rankings. I think I had him in the pre-draft process as my current wide receiver 11 pre-draft. Now, of course, gets boosted up in my rankings. 2.5 feels really great for Ricky Pearsall. At the 2.6, going to be Xavier Legette. And I understand I'm not a big Xavier Legette guy, but when you get a wide receiver drafted in the first round, you have to adjust accordingly in your rankings because that draft capital does matter. Yes, we've had wide receiver busts in the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth round. But Xavier Legette getting into an offense, is he going to be Jonathan Mingo 2.0? I don't know. I don't like that he broke out in year 5 at South Carolina, but Xavier Legette here at the 2.6. At the 2.7, we go with A.D. Mitchell for the Indianapolis Colts. Now, I think it's a great buy low time for Josh Downs, just because I think a lot of people are going to be thinking A.D. Mitchell is going to come in and immediately step into that wide receiver 2 role. Still got Alec Pierce. He still got Michael Pittman Jr. alongside Josh Downs, but I do think A.D. Mitchell will be that deep threat that's needed in the offense. So maybe it's not super relevant for fantasy because a lot of times these guys that are closer to the line of scrimmage, winning at the catch point a little bit more, tend to put up more reliable fantasy football points. But A.D. Mitchell to the Colts, love the draft capital at the 2.7. At the 2.8, we go with Malachi Corley, who lands with the New York Jets. And Malachi Corley, we talked about him as a Deebo Samuel, as someone, if you used him along the line of scrimmage as a Deebo Samuel, super electric. A lot of people weren't interested in Malachi Corley. He does end up getting that round 3 draft capital, so we love that for Malachi Corley. We then go with Polk, who lands with the New England at the 2.9. And like we said, a lot of these wide receivers got taken by the New England Patriots, who are going to try to do it by wide receiver by committee. We like the draft capital, so we're going to be sliding him in there. We go at the 2.10, and we go with Burton, who lands with my Cincinnati Bengals. Absolutely deep shot, Jermaine Burton. And the thing is, out of Alabama, definitely a lot of things that can be improved, but I think this draft pick definitely signifies that T. Higgins is going to be on a 1-year deal, and they're going to be moving on from him next season, which means that they need to start getting a young guy ready, and I think Burton's going to be able to help at least this season, and potentially has a lot of upside going into next season as well. We then, at the 2.11, go with Blake Corum, and maybe you could argue that Blake Corum, depending on your team roster construction, should be going a little bit earlier in your rookie draft, but gets round 3 draft capital. And I know Kyron Williams is there, but we talked about Kyron Williams as a sell a few weeks ago, and y'all were telling me that I'm an idiot. I'm not saying to sell Kyron Williams. I think this might actually open up a buy window, but Blake Corum got 3rd round draft capital. Kyron Williams did not get 3rd round draft capital, and they're really similar type player. Now, Sean McVay definitely loves to use a single running back. There hasn't been a ton of running back by committee in the past. I'm still all over Blake Corum here at the 2.11. Think it's great value. And then we're ending it off the second with Roman Wilson, who goes to the Steelers. Steelers know how to draft wide receivers. I think Roman Wilson's absolutely electric, great landing spot, has a chance to be the wide receiver 2 coming into the season. We'll have to see where that lands, both with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields as quarterback. We move into the 3rd round, and at the 3.1, we got Troy Franklin, who lands in the 4th round to the Denver Broncos. And the fall for Troy Franklin was absolutely astounding. A lot of people like me had Troy Franklin in their top 10 rookie wide receivers, and the NFL didn't look at him that way. There was a lot of rumors on why that ended up happening, but landing in a spot where he will be getting the ball thrown to him by Bo Nix, where you have Cortland Sutton, Marvin Mims, and now Troy Franklin in this wide receiver core, makes you a little bit excited about the potential for Troy Franklin. I've seen some mocks already where he is still going in the 2nd. I don't understand how that can be happening with that draft capital. I even think the 3.1's maybe a little bit me pushing him up, loving the prospect more than actually what the NFL is telling me, but I think the 3.1's appropriate. The 3.2, we got Ben Sinnott, who goes to the Commanders, joining Jaden Daniels. They do have Zach Ertz currently there, but I do think Ben Sinnott is the tight end of the future. We like that for Ben Sinnott. At the 3.3, we will go with McMillan, who gets drafted to Tampa Bay to be behind Chris Godwin, to be behind Mike Evans. We do have Chris Godwin on a 1-year deal, so I do think that could be a place that McMillan ends up sliding into. It definitely, the NFL showed that they liked McMillan, they liked Polk, both more than I think I did. Thought they were going to like them coming out of the pre-draft process. We got at the 3.4, we got Jalen Wright, who goes to the Miami Dolphins. Raheem Mostert, A-Chain, kind of that backup role to see, because we saw that when this Miami Dolphins, when injuries happen, it's rough. And I definitely think this hurts A-Chain's value. This hurts Mostert's value a little bit. We'll have to see how this all shakes out. I think there's going to be plenty of running back touches in this backfield, but Jalen Wright, I definitely thought he had 2nd round potential, but he does slide in here at the 3.4. At the 3.5, we go with Marshawn Lloyd to the Green Bay Packers. He is the RB3. They did re-sign A.J. Dillon to a 1-year deal. They do have Josh Jacobs, so I like the pick. They got pretty good value, Green Bay did, here on day 3, but Marshawn Lloyd at the 3.5 feels great. 3.6, we go with Bucky Irving, who goes to Tampa Bay. Rachaad White, man, shout out to Rachaad White, continues to avoid high-level prospects. Bucky Irving potentially could slide in to like that Darren Sproles role, that Keyshawn Vaughn, that 3rd down role role Giovanni Bernard that they've had in the past. I think Bucky Irving's a talented running back, but I'm also not worried about him really impacting Rachaad White's value. At the 3-6 feels great though. 3-7, Jatavion Sanders to the Carolina Panthers. And if you're in a tight end premium format, I could understand if you want to take Jatavion Sanders a little bit earlier. He definitely fell in the draft. We were expecting him to go round 2, round 3. That didn't end up happening, but lands in a Carolina Panthers situation where he probably is the tight end 1 coming into the season. So we like that for Jatavion Sanders. At the 3-8, we do have Des Walker, who lands with the Baltimore Ravens. They always need receivers. Behind Zay Flowers, behind Mark Andrews, behind Isaiah Likely, they always need guys. And let's be clear, Rashad Bateman is pretty much dust at this point. There's a lot of these high upside Baltimore Ravens wide receivers that we always had hope for. And Des Walker is going to be another one that we're going to slide in here as this late round dart throw shot. At the 3-9, we go with Luke McCaffrey. If you saw the TikTok of CMC kind of putting a call in and them just having a great time as a family as he gets drafted in the 3rd round, I thought that was a little earlier in my process, but lands with the Commanders. And like we've said, they have Scary Terry as their clear wide receiver 1. Jahan Dotson's been up and down. So can Luke McCaffrey kind of slide into that slot type role that they might need? I think that's definitely a possibility at the 3-9. At the 3-10, we go with Will Shipley. And shout out to White Lightning for landing on a team where he is going to be backing up Saquon Barkley. But as we've seen in the past, the Eagles run the ball just so freaking much. Will Shipley might have the shot to slide in case of emergency that Saquon Barkley ends up going down. 3-10 is a great late round dart throw that I'm taking. At the 3-11, we will be going with Jacob Cowing, who goes from Arizona to the 49ers. Great landing spot. Could this be a situation where he outproduces Ricky Pearsall? We'll have to see. We've seen the 49ers do this where they draft, a running back in the 3rd and a running back in the 6th, and the running back in the 6th actually ends up producing on the field. We'll have to see. Like I said, it's a great late round shot. And then at 3-12, we will be going with Javion Baker, who goes to the New England Patriots. And like we said, the Patriots are kind of playing this wide receiver by committee, drafting a ton of guys that have upside. I think if you look at Baker's overall reception perception, it is looking really great. But that's kind of my overall thought process for the top 3 rounds of your rookie drafts. So like I said, if you guys have made it through this whole video, appreciate you. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. We are going to be putting out a ton more content this week. So appreciate you guys for tuning in, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.